Good morning. Welcome to the first of our back-to-back webinars this morning that focuses on setting up a planned giving program for our parishes. My name is Ken Allen, and I'll be serving as the moderator for our sessions today. These are difficult, frightening times in which we live and work, times of challenge and change. We're preoccupied with the immediacy of our situation and anxious about what is to come. But today gives us the opportunity to think into and begin to prepare for our long-term future. I'm a member of the Financial Resources Committee of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington, D.C. The committee was established several years ago by Bishop Marianne Budde to assist parishes in meeting their financial needs. Our primary work with parishes has been focused on annual giving, planned giving, and most recently, personal financial planning. We are best known to many parishes for our themed resource kits on annual giving. I'm pleased to announce that the 2020 kit, built around the theme, Doing What Love Requires, is now available online. Just go to edow.org, look for Congregational Vitality in the horizontal menu, and then Stewardship on the drop-down menu below it. At my own church, St. Mark's Capitol Hill here in Washington, I served as senior warden and junior warden during two major renovation projects and their accompanying capital campaigns. An important added benefit to our first capital campaign was the launch of our own planned giving program, what we have dubbed the Legacy Lions. We were fortunate to benefit from the guidance and resources provided by the Episcopal Church Foundation, and particularly the help of James Murphy, our presenter today. Before introducing Jim, let me say just a word about the plan for this morning. This first session will last until roughly 11:15 a.m. We will then take a 15-minute break and return at 11:30 for the second session. Both sessions will be recorded and will be available for later viewing on both the EDOW and ECF websites. All participating parishes will receive by mail over the next few weeks ECF's Planned Giving on Demand Toolkit. And I'll be checking back with you to make sure that I have, by email, to make sure I have correct addresses to which those will be sent. You have the opportunity throughout this webinar to type in questions at the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. I'll be monitoring that, and there will be moments during the presentations when Jim will pause and we'll have time for him to respond to those. Now, to our presenter. Jim is Managing Program Director for Endowment Management, Planned Giving, and Donor Solutions at the Episcopal Church Foundation. He oversees ECF's Financial Resources Program, Planned Giving, Endowment Management, and Donor Solutions, including ECF's Donor Advised Fund program. He works with congregations, dioceses, and other Episcopal organizations to enhance and develop their programs and resources. Jim holds a certificate in fundraising from New York University's School of Continuing and Professional Studies, a master's in Christian spirituality from General Theological Seminary, and a bachelor's from NYU Stern School of Business. He is a member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals and is a certified fundraising executive. We're very pleased to have Jim leading us today. So Jim, over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ken. I really appreciate you inviting me. I thank you especially, and Rosemary Sweeney, who also has been involved in our planning. I especially thank your visionary bishop, Marianne Budde, and of course your diocese. I've been to your diocese in person, and though I'd love to be there in person, given circumstances with the pandemic, it's not possible. And in many ways, I mean, COVID-19 and everything that's going on right now is incentivizing people to reflect on what's been most important to them in their lifetime, thinking about ultimacy and their ultimate plans. And so this is really an opportunity for all of us as leaders of our congregation, be we clergy or lay leaders, to reflect on these issues and to begin planning for the future. As I often say, There is no one way to do anything, and certainly when it comes to planned giving, that is very true. And we'll be touching upon a number of issues just to try and empower you as leaders in this first session and then further in our second session, so that you can decide what you need to do as leaders of your congregation, whether it be simply planning now and educating yourselves and getting ready for doing some of the things that we'll be talking about, or if you're literally ready to move ahead and do some of this very important planned giving work and planning for the future. And of course, there's always that initial, hold on, there we go, hopefully. Sorry, guys. Okay, sorry. There's always something to get started, and as you can tell, my last name is Murphy, so Murphy's Law is always in effect. So very briefly, the Episcopal Church Foundation, for those of you who don't know us, many of you do. We are an independent, lay-led organization, and we focus on empowering congregations through a variety of programs. And we list some of these programs up on the screen right now. Many of you will be familiar with our Vital Practices resources. That's also where we hold all of our various webinars, which I will mention later in our workshop, in addition to many of the other leadership resources to help empower leaders throughout the Episcopal Church in all dioceses, parishes, and related entities. Many of you are familiar with our other programs, such as the Fellowship Partners Program, educational events we conduct, and of course, many of you are familiar with our very popular Vestry Resource Guide and its new companion, the Finance Resource Guide. I oversee several of the financial resource areas, as has already been mentioned, so I won't go further into that. But please know that all of us at the Episcopal Church Foundation are here to serve you, and I'll mention it many times, but please reach out to us. We would be more than happy to assist you. So our focus today is on planned giving, but I think it's always important to set context. And so to set initial context, when we're talking about making a financial gift, that is a part of the ongoing, very broad topic of Christian stewardship, where we talk about that everything that we have, everything that we are belongs to God, and we as stewards of those gifts oversee them and make choices that we think are best, either within our own personal circumstances or within our leadership roles at parishes. Now, when it comes to making a financial gift to a congregation, it is very important to keep some essential elements in mind, regardless of the type of gift that is. And the first being vision and mission. You need to be able to explain to people and tell your story. You need to be able to say what you are raising money for. And more, you need to be able to explain how that figures into your overall strategic vision for your congregation. Secondly, policy and structure. You need to have appropriate policies and structures in place, from endowment and gift acceptance policies to appropriate budgets that are clear and inspirational to the members of your parish, that will demonstrate that not only will these funds be safe, but they will be used for the purposes the donor intended, whatever those were. And by ensuring that you have these policies in place and you prove to the members of your congregation who are giving the donations that you can be trusted with those gifts, this is a natural way to enhance that level of trust and confidence in the members, from the members of the congregation in the leaders of that same congregation, so that they'd be more willing to entrust you with additional gifts. Finally, educate and enlighten. This is where people respond to the vision and they are inspired to be generous. This is what most stewardship talks focus on. It is a component of these three elements, though, because more and more you need to prove to people that your congregation is worthy of receiving these gifts and that you will use them in the way the donor had intended, matching with your vision and mission. So all of this is crucially important, as I say, regardless of the type of gift, but even more important when we're talking about planned gifts today. So very briefly, there are three basic types of gifts for context. The first being ordinary gifts or an ordinary giving, most often given within the annual giving effort in the fall, where people contribute and commit to a pledge or something of that nature so that they support the ongoing daily ministry, the ongoing budget of your congregation. And those gifts typically come from current income, but that is also changing as we have an aging population. I'm going to talk about that for just a second in a moment. Secondly, extraordinary giving. These are gifts typically seen in a capital campaign where someone makes a pledge and pays off that pledge over the course of several years. These can also be opportunities for individuals to make a very significant major gift for themselves. And these often go towards specific needs when in the context of a capital campaign planned, that has been planned out and well communicated. They are typically going to build endowments or enhance facilities. And this is also a key factor where you need to build trust so that, again, people will be willing to make these very significant commitments to you. Finally, there's ultimate giving or planned giving or legacy giving. All of these are the same basic thing. These are gifts which typically are gifts out of an estate after someone passes away, that they come to you as a congregation, or out of someone's retirement assets. And let me just point out, the most important word in this brief description that you see on the screen right now is the word future. These gifts, on the whole, are future-focused gifts. Individuals who give them do not want them consumed in the regular operating income. They are making these gifts to you as a pledge to your future, that they believe so strongly in the work and ministry of your congregation that they would put you into their estate plans. Now, let me say a couple of quick things, since everyone who should be listening to this is typically a leader at their congregation. When it comes to ultimate and planned giving, okay, this will typically be the smallest number of gifts that your congregation will receive. If you can imagine an upside down triangle where the base of the triangle, the largest part, is at ordinary giving, and then the tip of the triangle is down at ultimate giving, that represents the number of gifts. So you get the largest number of gifts from annual giving. You get a smaller number of gifts typically when you do your capital campaign or a major gifts effort, but you truly get the smallest number of gifts from planned giving and legacy gifts. Now, I'm here to tell you today that is okay. That is okay, that it is not the largest number of gifts, because these gifts that people give through their estate or after they pass away are typically the largest gifts that anyone would give in their lifetime. And they can be truly life-changing to the congregation. And I'll also note, and I'll bring this back up again later, as I said, these are future-focused gifts. So most of the time, these are most appropriate to be placed into your endowment funds so that they last for the future, to fund that future ministry, to enable that person to be a part of that future ministry after they have passed away. So I need to say just a couple of things, and I know that the committee here in the wonderful Diocese of Washington has been focusing in on this, but let me just say a few quick notes. The different types of gifts that I've mentioned, donors can make all of these gifts that are up on the screen. Cash, hopefully everyone has electronic giving during this time of COVID in place. They can make appreciated asset gifts, and that will become more and more common as our population ages and people desire to make a significant gift during their lifetime. There's also opportunities to give a qualified charitable distribution through an IRA. I'm not going to focus on that, but I do want to mention it, that things are evolving and things are changing now. And there are other gifts, such as donor advised funds or grants from foundations in which some of your members may participate or actually have founded that foundation, where they can make gifts to your congregation in all of these different ways. I only mention it briefly now because one of the resources that I will be sharing with everyone who signed up for this webinar, they will receive an updated giving card. We're not calling it a pledge card anymore because we need to incorporate all the different options for giving, including planned giving and estate giving. So that will be shared with everyone, and I will also invite people, and I will send this link as well and make it available. We've recorded several webinars that will help educate donors on what they can give, and those will also be available. I'm not going to focus in on all of the different tax updates, but I do want to share this slide with people because so much has changed, and my goodness, changed yet again very recently with the CARES Act that had gone through, and some of those items that are noted for 2020 are up on the screen. However, I do want to just note that charitable giving is not going away. Back in 2018, a lot of nonprofits were very frightened that they were going to be challenged because the standard deduction got raised tremendously, and fewer people were going to be itemizing their gifts, okay? Now, what that main change caused is that some people in certain years will start to bunch or batch their giving so that they may give to your congregation or to another charity multiple years of gifts all at the same time. This is really important because if you've built up enough trust with the members of your congregation, they will make those kind of gifts, and you will need to hold on to their batched or bunched donations that they might give all at once. However, what is happening already, we're witnessing it, and the Episcopal Church Foundation has a tool, a donor advised fund, to help with this. Many donors are actually creating donor advised funds to bunch or batch their donation by making a large single donation at one time and then making grants from that donor advised fund in the future. There are many different options for people to investigate on this, but I do want to mention it because it is something that is changing and also something that indirectly can relate to planned giving, because as people are making very significant gifts into their donor advised fund, not only will they be giving current grants, but they may also leave the balance, the remaining balance, in a donor advised fund to a particular Episcopal congregation or Episcopal entity. So donor advised funds are a part, though I'm not going to focus on that today. I will be focusing later on the various tax deferred accounts, but one quick note, just to keep in everyone's mind and to know that we'll be sharing this giving card, which will encourage this type of giving. For traditional IRAs, I'm sure many of you out there have been seeing over the past couple of years gifts from traditional IRA accounts as charitable contributions, as qualified charitable distributions to your congregation. This is only going to increase over time, and though there are no required minimum distributions in 2020 and the minimum age has been raised to 72, you will continue to see these. And when you get them, remember and note that people have these, because it will figure into your planned giving efforts later on when encouraging them to make a gift of the remainder balance of that IRA, as well as the other tax deferred accounts. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I touched on that and put those notes up on the screen because it has come up over and over and over again when I'm talking about planned giving. However, let's refocus again to our main topic, which is legacy giving, ultimate giving, and what's commonly known as planned giving. There's a brief description up on the screen, which you can read for yourself. But the most important words in that description are the words personal values. And I am now going to say the single most important thing I will say today. And if you remember nothing else from this webinar and have to replay it, make sure that this is the central thing that you remember, and that is when an individual makes a planned gift to your congregation, they raise your congregation to the level of family in their estate plans, to the same place that their children and grandchildren are. This is a tremendously important gift to the individual, and they are demonstrating that to you as leaders of the congregation by making it. They believe so strongly in your future mission and ministry that they put you at this very, very unique and particular place. Therefore, it is imperative that you as leaders respond appropriately and thank them and do things that we'll be talking about in our next webinar about showing appreciation and drawing them in and making sure they know of all the different ways that they could make a planned gift to your congregation. Also, this is a starter thing, just to remember, put in the back of your mind, because what I'm seeking to do today is not turn you into a planned giving expert, but to turn you and others at your congregation into better awareness raisers about planned giving, so that you can raise awareness and allow people at their own time and schedule and as is appropriate for them and their family to create a planned gift, which may ultimately benefit your congregation. And we'll come back to many of these concepts over and over again, but this is the center. So the first center, of course, is that they raise you to the level of family, understand how important and crucial that is, and you do need to say thank you and stay in relationship with those folks. Secondly, remember, when it comes to planned giving, you should never come across as aggressive or pushy, or for that matter, simply focused on one singular type of planned gift. Planned giving is a natural extension of the stewardship work that you are doing at your congregation, but it is different. These gifts are much bigger. Individuals need to seek legal, tax, and financial assistance in making them. They need to ensure that they inform their family about them so that there is no issue when the gift is ultimately given. So because of all of this important preparatory work that people need to do when it comes to planned giving, all leaders on this webinar, please listen. It is imperative that you remain sensitive, gentle, and patient. It is a difficult issue to talk about someone's passing and their ultimate choices, whether it be their planning for the end of life or their choices in their estate. These are all difficult issues and ones which take time for them to reflect upon and decide what is best for them. Therefore, never be pushy, never be aggressive. Always, in whatever you do, be sensitive, gentle, and patient. Planned giving is your ultimate long-term ministry, and as I say, a natural extension of stewardship. And these gifts take time. They take time to cultivate, and people may change them over time. They may, in fact, choose to give to a different institution. However, you, as leaders of your congregation, need to instill all of that sense of confidence and trust that I had mentioned before, so that people will be willing to make these gifts and ensure that you are kept within their estate plans. The third important starter point here is, please remember never to appear that you are giving legal, tax, or financial advice. You are always encouraging the members of your congregation, before they finalize any gifts, especially any planned gift because of their nature and that it's coming out of the estate and complex assets, that they reflect on their choices with appropriate legal, tax, and financial counsel. That is not your role. Your role as a leader of your congregation is to raise awareness, to demonstrate appreciation, and we will talk through many of these issues in the second webinar, as well as somewhat in this webinar. But I want to just ensure that you feel empowered and educated about the basics of planned giving, so that you can be ready to start your program whenever you are ready as leaders of the congregation. So if you know me from other presentations, or you've seen me in person, you know I like to joke and kid around. And though I love doing webinars, gosh, I miss having that interactive audience, and I can joke and kid around with things. And this is one of them that I often do, which is, this is from the prayer book. This is from our prayer book. They used to be called rubrics when they were in red in the past. And I often will ask people, here is the clearest direction in our Book of Common Prayer for everyone in the congregation to consider making a planned gift to that congregation and to other charities. Well, I'm often then kidding around with folks saying, and where do you think this shows up in our prayer book? And I have to be very careful and jump right in when I do that and say, and for those of you who are here, bishop, deacon, priest, dean, whatever, be careful not to say, well, it must be in the funeral office, because quite honestly, if this were in the funeral office, it's probably a little late to be asking for a planned gift at the funeral. Where this actually shows up in our Book of Common Prayer is in the service we don't often see for the celebration for the birth or adoption of a child. Now, this is, I see there's a clock appearing above my head, so I should probably stop moving around. Sorry about that, guys. But this is a very transformational time in people's lives when you're becoming a parent. All of you who are parents out there know this. And this is a part of the wisdom of the Episcopal Church. And sadly, we don't pat ourselves on the back enough when we make good decisions like this. Putting this direction in this section of the prayer book when there is a truly transformational time in people's lives is very wise, because this is when people are considering what has been most important to them in their lifetime and what choices are they going to make for remembering and raising institutions, hopefully their parish, to the level of family. This is also not a wishy-washy direction. Priests and deacons who are on the line, please note, this is a direction. This is not an either or, both and, you must do this. This is a part of what you must do. And quite honestly, even if you don't have this service going on at your congregation, you can still put this on your website. You can read it when it's appropriate during the year to inspire people to give. You can use it as you need it. That is the wonder of our prayer book, that we can pull these things out and make use of them whenever it's appropriate. Unfortunately, I can't do my other joke, but just so you know, this shows up in the wonderful 1928 Book of Common Prayer in rather an awkward spot where it's in the ministration of the sick. So that was not a good choice, but it's in a great section of the prayer book now. Make use of it. It's a tool for you, just like all of these other tools, which I'll be mentioning later. So this is our summary of all of the most important aspects for people to remember when it comes to planned giving, that this is a future-focused gift. This will typically end up in your endowment. And I will also let you know now, as well as later, the Episcopal Church Foundation would be happy to help your congregation put in place endowment and gift acceptance policies to help build that sense of trust and confidence, so that people be willing to make these sorts of gifts, so they understand how the gift will be handled when it's going to be made. But remember also, it's not only that, it's also that this is a gift of great passion and conviction. They're raising you to the level of family in their estate plans. And always remember to be sensitive and gentle, never pushy, but always, and I'll bring back these last 2 points over and over again, that you're seeking to build trust and sustain awareness. Building trust so that people will trust you with these types of gifts, because they won't be here when they give them. They will come after they have passed away, the vast majority of the time. And also to sustain awareness and make sure that people are aware they can do this. Because if you're not, other charities will be. Okay. So we're now going to get just a little bit deeper. And for those of you who are uncomfortable with detail, I apologize. This is always an important thing, I feel, to go through so that people know there are many, many different types of gifts, right? It isn't just one. And you should never focus just on one, because people are different, people's family circumstances are different, and quite honestly, people's needs change over time. So making sure that people are aware of all the different types of gifts will help them to be more generous to you as a congregation. And of course, a rising tide lifts all boats to all charities which they support and that were important to them. Many other, I've had the experience, many other charities raise awareness of planned giving, and it benefits the church. So it's not a bad thing that everybody is trying to raise awareness, but religious institutions do not do, honestly, a great job. And we're going to talk about that more in the second session. But the bottom line, I just wanted to note that there are many, many different types of planned gifts. And that's the important lesson, that there are many, and one will not always fit everyone. Everyone must reflect on what's appropriate for them and their family and what's the best gift or gifts for them. Okay. So I'm going to focus in very, very briefly just on a few gifts, and then we'll be taking some questions as well. But I want to make sure that we stay on time, and so far it looks like we're doing okay. So there are several different types of special asset gifts. And let me reiterate something I said before, which is my goal is not to turn you into planned giving experts so that you can talk in infinitesimal detail about all of these different types of gifts. No, what I'm trying to do here is to help you become better awareness raisers and just to help educate you that there are many different types, just so that you know a little bit about each of these. And I will be sharing many tools with you, but one of them will be what I call the cheat sheet, which enables you to have a quick reference for all these different types of gifts and to know the basics of them so that if an opportunity comes up where you can make someone aware of a planned gift or a type of planned gift, you would be more empowered to do so. Okay. So the first type, retirement accounts, and I've already mentioned this. IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, all of these different types of retirement accounts are tax deferred, where you are putting money away while you are working, and then, I'm trying to get rid of that clock in the background, sorry, while you are working and you receive a tax benefit by reducing your taxable income for that, you do not take withdrawals typically until you are retired, okay? Now that's a wonderful opportunity for people, and honestly, folks my age, I'm 52 and younger, basically all of our retirement assets are going to be in these types of accounts because very few of us have pensions in the traditional sense. Why I mention this for planned giving is that this will truly be a tremendous source in the future. It already is, but it will just continue to increase as a source for planned giving. And that is because this typically is outside of one's estate, okay? Outside of the probated estate that's governed by your will or trust that you have put together. And for many, many people, the vast majority of their assets will be held in this type of retirement account. And what you can do and what you can encourage the members of your congregation to consider is that they could make the parish a full or partial beneficiary of that retirement account. And this would be just a tremendous gift. The real advantage to the parish is that even though those are all tax deferred earnings, which an individual would need to pay taxes on when they took a withdrawal, when the charity receives that ultimate gift of the remainder, they pay nothing of those deferred taxes. So this is just a tremendous gift, which will continue to be more and more important over time. Life insurance can be a great gift. If that's something that you're considering doing, please do reach out to an appropriate life insurance professional. You can easily make the parish the beneficiary of any type of life insurance, whether it's term life insurance or whole life insurance, and that enables for that gift to go directly to the parish. However, most people will use life insurance as a wealth replacement tool. where they will leave life insurance proceeds to individuals that they wish to benefit, and then leave a portion of the rest of their estate, which might be taxed because it's appreciated greatly in value. They would leave those other assets to charity. And it all depends on what's appropriate for you and your family. But do know that many people have term life insurance, which they would love to give to your parish, and they can through just changing the beneficiary form easily when they go into the office the next time. Real estate, all I will say about real estate is, please, if you or members of the parish are considering making a real estate gift, reach out to the leadership of the parish to make sure that they understand what you're intending on doing, so that they can tell you whether or not they can accept a piece of real estate. Sometimes a real estate gift is what we call the gift that keeps on taking. Unfortunately, many people will give a gift of real estate because they can't get rid of it any other way. And unfortunately, that ends up being a burden on many congregations. And there are many, many stories out there, some of which I share when I'm live in person, where it really does demonstrate that people end up spending more getting rid of a piece of real estate than they'll receive in terms of the gift value. So be careful when it comes to real estate. Charitable lead trusts, I'm not going to get into, but please know that the Episcopal Church Foundation would be happy to help any individuals who might be of much greater means, having $10 million or more of assets. There's an opportunity to create a charitable lead trust, which actually pays out to charities while that charitable lead trust exists. And then at the termination of this taxable charitable lead trust, it then distributes assets either to another charitable vehicle or to the grantor or to the grantor's beneficiary. So it's a very, very complex gift, but the Episcopal Church Foundation would be happy to help if you happen to be so blessed as to have individuals in your congregation with $10 million or more of assets, and they're looking to do some estate planning. Where I want to focus a bit of time now is, of course, in the area of bequests. And when I say bequests, I'm being very inclusive. I am not only talking about the probated will, right, which is written and we encourage everyone to have in place, because that helps determine who will care for your children or other people for whom you're responsible for, an elderly parent or whoever that might be. And so I would encourage you to always have a will and make sure you work with an appropriate legal, tax, or financial advisor. I'm trying to get rid of that ongoing pop-up of the, well, I guess I'm just going to have to live with it for now. So with putting in place your will or trust, because many people do not wish their assets to go through the probate process. They wish to be confidential, and therefore they may create what's known as an inter vivos or living trust, where they place their assets during lifetime and then at death it distributes. I'm also including, when I'm talking about bequests, not only the probated estate and trusts, but also other various account designations known as transfer on death or pay on death. These are becoming more and more popular, that when you're setting up a new bank account or brokerage account, you can actually specify at that time who it would be that would receive the particular asset right at death, and it doesn't then go through a probated estate. Again, I'm being inclusive with all of these and encouraging each of you, as well as you, to encourage every member of your congregation before finalizing one of these gifts to seek appropriate legal, tax, or financial advice to ensure that their wishes are fulfilled. So for all of these different types of bequests coming from these different sources, there are some related items that people need to consider. And the first being, what is the type of gift that you wish to give? Do you wish to give a specific dollar amount, meaning pay out these specific dollar amounts before paying any of the rest out? That is something you can consider and could be appropriate for your situation. also then may not be, because when you have specific dollar amount bequests, those amounts must be paid first before any other allocations are paid out of your estate. Sometimes if you had a radical change of circumstances late in life and you have fewer assets than you anticipated, this could actually deplete some of what you were actually intending to leave as a remainder from your estate. So do consider this and work with your legal and financial advisors to ensure that what you're intending will actually take place. What often benefits many people better, and of course is appropriate for giving to individuals, your family and others, as well as to those charities that you may support, would be making a percentage gift, so that whether or not you pass with a larger estate than expected or a smaller estate, you can still show that sense of passion and conviction by giving a specific, by giving a significant percentage to a person or to a charity. You can also give specific assets, your car, your house, other assets, but I will again encourage you to encourage the members of your congregation. If that is something they're considering doing, please seek out the leaders of the congregation and make sure that your endowment and gift acceptance policies can even accept those types of assets. Because you as a congregation, and this is an important point to remember, you as a congregation can say no. You can say no to a gift. Sometimes you have to say no if it's overly restricted, and we'll come back to that in a moment. I've already mentioned this concept of remainder, so that after you either pay out specific amounts or specific assets, whatever remains from your estate, that could be designated as a gift to charity or a gift to an individual, depending on your choice. When remainder gifts are given to charities, they are often the largest gift that that charity typically receives. Those are very, very significant gifts. And that can be both intentional as well as unintentional. Intentional if you truly wanted to leave the majority of your estate to your chosen charity. Could be unintentional if you did not track well the assets that you expected to pass away with. And the Episcopal Church Foundation has some tools that I'll mention later and in the next webinar to help individuals think through this process before going to see their appropriate legal and financial advisor. Finally, contingency bequest. This is, if this happens, then that happens. So if, God forbid, your spouse predeceases you, or God forbid, your children predecease you, then the asset, the amount, the percentage, whatever it is, would go to a charity or to another individual. And that, honestly, is just good estate planning. And a good attorney, and if you haven't realized it yet, I'm encouraging you to work with a professional attorney to ensure your wishes are fulfilled. A good attorney will talk you through the contingency just so you don't have to continually go back and always revise your will when circumstances change. It's crucial that you are reflecting on your circumstances on an ongoing basis, and from time to time that you review your estate plans and review them with appropriate legal counsel and financial advisors, because times change. When you change states, different states require different things, and it may be appropriate to write a new will. Other things change. Children may or may not need assets, or there may be changes of circumstances where you're caring for someone you didn't expect to. All of these things need to be taken into account when you're planning your estate and when you're making these important decisions, because bottom line, you want to ensure that your wishes are fulfilled. And as you can see, the largest number of planned gifts come in this format, from a probated will, from a trust that is distributing after people die, or from the various transfer on death notifications, including more and more in the future, those retirement account residuums. Now, let me just say one quick word about bequest designations, but this also applies to any planned gift that I'll also mention. There is a natural tendency, and you as leaders of the congregation need to know this, there is a natural tendency for individuals, especially when they're making a very significant planned gift, to desire to restrict that gift in some way, shape, or form. As you may remember, these are often future-focused gifts, and many people may not have the same level of trust and confidence in the leadership of the congregation, and therefore they may desire to restrict it in some way, shape, or form. It's important that you as leaders of your congregation put in place appropriate gift acceptance policy structure and endowment policy structure to encourage more people to leave more unrestricted gifts, because it is much easier to receive an unrestricted gift. Sometimes a restricted gift may have restrictions on it that you can't accept or it can't be used. And so this is a very important stage and something which the Episcopal Church Foundation, by sharing its best practice endowment and gift acceptance policies, can help you with. So we'll be talking about that again later. Okay, we're almost done with the detail section. For those of you who might be struggling with this, here's the most detail you're probably going to get. So there is a type of planned gift called a life income gift. And they are only used by maybe 10% or so of people, but they can be very, very valuable. And unfortunately, churches rarely raise awareness of them because they're either afraid of them, they don't understand them, or they think that they're just too complex. Well, here's some good news, and that is these are gifts which the Episcopal Church Foundation, our organization, oversees for the Episcopal Church, for every diocese, parish, and related entities. And yes, they are more complex, and I'll explain them now. They are more complex because they involve an individual making a gift in 1 year, and then typically for the rest of his or her life, receiving income for the rest of that life. And then when they pass away, or the person they designated to receive the income passes away, that is when the remainder is given to charity. So the good news is that the Episcopal Church Foundation, as a part of our work as the main resource for planned giving in the Episcopal Church, we have all of these programs for these gift types that I'll briefly explain, and they are available to all of the members of your congregation. So you don't need to be expert. You don't need to register as we do with all of the state governments. You don't have to have all of that in place. The Episcopal Church Foundation, with its financial partner, State Street Global Advisors up in Boston, takes care of all of the back office work, all of the tax forms, all of the administration, and the eventual distribution of these gifts. It's not something that you as a parish or a diocese needs to worry about. But these are gifts where an individual just can't give away a gift without, in exchange, receiving a flow of income back to them or to someone they designate. And so, as is elaborated on the screen, that donor makes that irrevocable gift. They can never get that gift back, but because it's irrevocable, it's an actual gift, the donor receives a charitable deduction in the year of the gift. Typically the donor, but the donor can designate someone else, like an elderly parent or a spouse or someone else, to receive the income. That person will receive it typically for the rest of their life for a fixed term of years. And then at the death of the person receiving income, that is when the assets are liquidated and given to charity. So that's how all of these gifts work. I am not going to focus in on them, but I do just want to briefly touch upon each of them, and then we're going to take some questions. But it is interesting, I will mention, that during this time of COVID and during this time of tremendous market volatility, we've been receiving several calls trying to create one or another of these life income gifts. And that is because they can be very beneficial and very appropriate for people when they're retired. 3 basic types. I'm just going to touch on each, and you'll get a cheat sheet on them later. So the first type is called the pooled income fund. Simple gift where your gift, after you give it, is pooled with other gifts of the same kind, and those who are participating in the pool receive a pro rata share of the income, the net income of interest and dividends. This is not as popular of a gift as it once was when interest rates were sky high, but it remains active in our program. We just created one for about $250,000 just about a month ago. And it is for someone who doesn't need consistent income and is comfortable with variable income from year to year because it goes up and down, but wants to leave the maximum remainder for their charity. The second type of gift I'll just mention, and again, we have resources for all of these. Just know that they exist and you can make people aware of them and they can decide what's appropriate and then contact DCF to work with us. So the next is a charitable gift annuity. This is the most popular of all of the different types of gifts. This is where an individual makes a gift and then enters into a contract with a sponsoring charity. In this case, it's the Episcopal Church Foundation that is the sponsoring charity. The sponsoring charity guarantees to pay a fixed amount based upon an annuity rate assigned to them at their current age. This is a very useful and flexible tool when someone is planning retirement. And as you can tell, almost all of the different types of life income gifts come from this source. And ECF takes care with all of these, the back office work. The final one I just wanted to mention is the charitable remainder trust. Now this is more complex than the other two. The first two are actually pretty simple, very easy to create. You just fill out the application and ECF sends an illustration and then works you through the process. With the charitable remainder trust, it's a little more complex, and that's why there's a higher dollar amount. This is where an individual is going to give perhaps a more complex asset, and they can create an individual trust. And unlike the other two gifts, they can actually, through this gift, give to some non-Episcopal entities as long as the majority, 51% or more of the ultimate gift from this trust will go to Episcopal entities. The rest can go to non-Episcopal, like their college or other charities. It will also give income to more than two people, which isn't possible with the first two types of gifts. And as I said before, you can create these with almost any type of asset, including real estate, which is rather a popular one. So what's really important, again, with this type of gift, ECF serves the donor and their attorneys throughout this process, and we can draft up the initial trust document for that donor and the attorney to review. Why is that important? Because fewer and fewer attorneys are now practicing trust and estates law, and this is very beneficial to have this initial trust document for someone's attorney to review before it's nearly complete. And then ECF can serve as permanent trustee over that trust for the rest of that donor or whomever they've designated to receive the income for the rest of that person's life. So as I say, these are all opportunities for you as a leader of your parish. You don't need to know all the details. It's helpful to know there's differences between them, but the central thing that is important to know is that this is for someone who wants to make a gift and then in exchange for that gift receive income. And all that needs to be done is that you need to contact or have that donor contact us at the Episcopal Church Foundation, and we can work with them through the creation of an illustration and help them decide which is the best gift for them. But we will always hold their interests first. Just want to show you briefly what one of the slides of such an illustration would look like for the most popular gift, a charitable gift annuity. In this case, it's Miss Smith, and it's quite often Miss Smith or a woman who is creating these. And the way it works is that she would receive a fixed annuity for the rest of her life. In this case, she would receive a large portion of that annuity, or $5,800, I'm sorry, she would receive a large portion of the $5,800 annuity in tax-free because she had made a gift of cash. And this is very useful for many people who have CDs and other stores of cash to which they cannot move it for a higher interest rate. And this isn't of great interest to many of the people in your congregation. As you can see, though, it is a high annuity rate. And the reason it is high is because over time, by its nature, and this is a part of what it is as a gift, it does dig into the principle of the gift so that on average, about 50% of the original gift will remain when the income beneficiary passes away. So that enables for, in this case, about $50,000. That $50,000 is not guaranteed to the charity, though. It can be higher or it can be lower. The income, though, is guaranteed by the sponsoring charity, in this case, the Episcopal Church Foundation, to the person receiving it. You can also do it for two people. It works much the same way, giving a 50% remainder on the whole most of the time. But of course, the annuity rate is lower because you're dealing with two lives instead of just one. Okay, so I know that was a lot of detail, but what I want to just say, and I know that my friend Ken Allen will be coming up on the screen momentarily to let me know about some questions that might have come through, and then we will just wrap up our webinar. But what I just want to say before we get started is I've just gone over a lot of detail. And again, what I'm trying to do today is simply to educate you, to make you feel more empowered so that you're not afraid about planned giving, so that you will take these next important steps to have a planned giving program at your congregation. But I'd love to get some questions as they exist out there, Ken.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim, for that. We do have some questions, but let me encourage everyone to use the Q&A function on the screen. If you'll type in your questions, as some of you have done, we'll pass them on to Jim here. But let me get, excuse me, let me get started with this. Where should our parish volunteers focus their energy on the types of planned gifts? If they were going to get started, so, what's their priority?
I think the most important thing for all leaders, and I insinuated this before, I guess, was that you need to focus on getting people to reflect on planning their estate. And in the next session, we'll talk more about using a tool called Planning for the End of Life, which is a downloadable a booklet for people to use. But it's focusing on planning your estate and ensuring that your wishes are fulfilled. That is where you should be spending most of your time. You should be raising awareness, right, about all of the different types of gifts so that people can make that decision on their own, right? But your main focus, what you as leaders in your congregation would be to focus in on estate planning and end-of-life planning, because that is where the vast majority of gifts are, and quite honestly, it's a real benefit to the members of your congregation, even if they never leave you a gift, because sadly, the statistic is right around 50% of Americans don't have a written will, sadly. So this is an extension, again, of ministry to your congregation to enable them to ensure that their wishes are fulfilled.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ken.
Here's a second one, Jim. What is the biggest obstacle to starting a planned giving program at most parishes?
Quite honestly, it is a bit of fear on the part of the leadership. They're afraid to move forward, and that's why I try to focus in on making some of the details of it much clearer so that they feel more confident. But the other factor is one I've already mentioned, which is trust. Individuals who are members of the parish need to trust that the leadership understands the importance of these gifts, and they put a set of policies in place to help guide themselves on how to take in these gifts. So it's honestly a combination of that lack of knowledge, that lack of comfort, and it just stymies people and doesn't move them ahead. Hopefully with the tools of Plan Giving on Demand and other things, it will move them ahead, but also with the sense of building trust among the members of the congregation. That honestly is something leaders need to do so that members of the congregation will feel more comfortable in making those types of planned gifts.
Okay, thank you. I have two here, but let me do this one first. Do you have any suggestions on how best to raise awareness of planned giving?
So one of the best ways to start is to have an adult forum where you would actually, and I'll talk about this more in the second webinar, where you would raise awareness about planned giving or planning for the end of life, depending what fits within your congregation. I'm going to talk more in our next session about putting in place a planned giving shepherd, the person to steward this process forward. And so it's this combination of finding a leader who is going to be dedicated to raising awareness about planned giving, and then having that leader begin to test out raising awareness by, one, maybe having booklets and brochures at the back of the church, having the rector or priest or deacon make notation about the importance of planned giving and reading that bit from the prayer book that I had brought up before. But adult forums are usually a great way to get started and get people thinking about this. And let me just say, for all of the leaders out there, do not be frustrated if the first adult forum you do, talking about types of planned gifts or talking about beginning to think about what your plans for the end of life would be, if you have a small turnout, it's okay. This is your ultimate long-term ministry, and it will take time. And the resources of Planned Giving on Demand and all the others from the Episcopal Church Foundation will help you move this process forward incrementally.
Great. Okay, here's, let me read this as it came in. We're eager to start a program as, you okay, Jim? Okay. We're eager to start a program as soon as possible. We have people who have made planned gifts, but we do not have a formal program. We do not have an endowment or gift receiving policies. But here's the good news of this. We do have unrestricted investments of around $750,000.
God bless you.
I assume we need to get the endowment details set before we solicit more planned gifts or qualify and invite those who have made them to self-identify. Is that correct?
More or less correct. You can actually have a parallel track. You can actually do both almost at the same time. So we'll be sharing with you ECF's best practice endowment and gift acceptance policies, which will serve both ends, right? It will help you to discern what your choices are when it comes to endowments and gifts that will come in the future, but it will also help you to have a means of talking about that the parish is getting serious about this and focusing on their future. So that trust building, that confidence building will serve both ends, but yes, and ECF is happy to help you with that.
Okay, a related question that just came in. What are some strategies by which a congregation which has no endowment can create one?
Well, I actually have the same advice. Whether or not you have a penny or a dime in endowment, you should be putting in place endowment and gift acceptance policies now. You actually have advantages to not having any assets in place because you can set up all of these parameters now for how people would give that gift. So same advice, put in place those endowment and gift acceptance policies, and as I say, find that leader or group of leaders to focus on planned giving. And I know we have a couple more slides that I do want to touch upon, and then we can wrap up. So any other questions?
Yes, one last one, and this is a good one, Jim. Do you have any recommendations about whether including planned giving in an adult forum series about end-of-life issues is perceived as more pastoral and therefore more effective in responding to planned gifts.
So I am a big advocate of what works for your congregation. I can make suggestions and you can reflect on what you think will fit best for your congregation. That is up to you. Some parishes find it beneficial to actually start with a part of the planning for the end-of-life document, which I'll explain in the next session, which is 3 sessions, planning your medical care and helping your health proxy know what your desires are, planning a funeral, and planning your estate. Some parishes find that starting with focusing on the issue of health care and making sure that people are aware that every age, no matter how old you are, you need to be thinking about how you wish to be cared for. And at this time of COVID, oh my goodness, this is even more important. And I'm very happy to tell you that we at ECF have a couple of recorded webinars that you can simply play within the context of an adult forum. And we'd be happy to talk with you directly to talk you through how to do that. But we have resources for a couple of these adult forums, which will help people to consider what their desires are, and also in a velvet glove sort of way, introduce the concept of planned giving. So I think that answers the question. Generally, the answer is yes, but it does depend on your parish. There are some parishes that really have not done enough honest work in raising awareness about planned giving or about the importance of doing certain things. And therefore, it may be harder to do a planning for the end-of-life event. It could also be done in any way that fits the congregation.
Okay. Jim, I have one quick follow-up to an earlier question.
Sure.
Is it a best practice to have both an endowment and a rainy day investment fund that remains unrestricted?
I would say yes, you want to have both, because your investment funds that are unrestricted, also known as quasi-endowment, and I know, Ken, you told me that people weren't going to be wanting to talk about endowments, but yeah, you should be thinking about having both, because it is the donor who makes a gift a true endowment and adds it to an existing true endowment fund, or that gives you an unrestricted gift, which you can either hold as a reserve fund for a particular purpose, or you as the vestry can actually designate it as what's known as a quasi-endowment or board restricted endowment, which means that the board in the future can actually get access to the assets. It's not something we recommend, but because you don't want to break down that level of trust and confidence that you're properly managing all your assets, but it is possible that in an emergency situation that you would be able to draw more deeply from those quasi-endowment funds. So what this says to me, Ken, is we're going to have a future webinar about endowments. How about that?
There you go. So Jim, over to you for your last couple of slides and wrap up,
Yeah.
and then we'll move on.
Great, and I'm actually impressed with myself. I'm more or less staying on time, which is not an easy thing when you're not live. It's, believe it or not, it's hard to do when you're on video. Anyway, so just to begin to wrap us up and introduce our next webinar and the topics. Most of the folks on this webinar are staying and will be on the next one, and that's great. And so this will continue on. But do know, for anybody who can't, we'll be recording that webinar. It'll be available to you, plus all of the other resources. But let me say a couple of things, and I've alluded to this already, but it's such an important point. Building that level of trust is key, and I've already talked about how you can do that and will continue to. But sustaining a level of awareness about the different types of planned gifts, and that individuals can make this type of gift, whatever they end up choosing, it is crucial that you're raising awareness so that people make this decision and consider the parish. Of course, if you've not built up trust and there's not a clarity on how these things are going to be handled, they may not be as inclined to give you this gift. However, churches, and this was just reported in a recent webinar focusing on Giving USA, churches do a terrible job of raising awareness. And that's why it's always my key goal to make sure that you, as leaders of your parish, are raising that awareness, because every other charity in this country is seeking to get a planned gift from the members of your congregation. And they're doing it during this time too, at COVID time, when everybody's home. So there's no reason why you too, as a parish, as is culturally appropriate, can also raise awareness of planned giving, put out there the different webinars and resources that ECF has, and begin to form a program. I do strongly believe in planning first and thinking it through, but there's no reason you can't get started soon. I wanted to just make a few quick points, and that is to help those individuals out there whose parishes do not have anything in place right now, or their planned giving efforts have just sort of waned through the years, because that's not an uncommon thing to happen. So I want you to avoid some of these initial, or I could say rookie mistakes. And the biggest one is that you think that you want to focus on the very oldest and wealthiest, the folks with all the money at your congregation when it comes to planned giving, and that will make a successful plan. Well, let me just disabuse you of that. When it comes to the most elderly members of your congregation, in all likelihood, they've already made all of their end-of-life plans at this point. And though you should still raise awareness to everyone, regardless of age or circumstance, to let them make their own choice, most of those very elderly members of the parish are not going to want to change their plans now, because they don't want their competency challenged later. The other issue is the wealthy. People think, oh, we don't have wealthy kind of people who have estates to give to the parish. Well, the truth is, there is no statistical tracking between great wealth and significant planned gifts. The significant planned gifts which often come from those unexpected people. If you come up to New York and you get people to be honest with you about some of the endowed parishes in Midtown, what they're going to tell you is it didn't come from the Morgans or the Vanderbilts or any of those big names that we hear all the time. It came from the elderly woman who never dressed well at church. Nobody realized she was holding on to her funds because she was afraid of either letting people know she had so many assets, and she was such a savvy investor, or she was just holding on to her assets for fear of outliving them. But she believed in the future mission and ministry of your congregation, and it is she, and I often say she because we should all know women are much more generous than men, much more reliable for planned giving than men, that those are the really significant gifts that will come from the unexpected. But there is an indicator, and the clearest indicator is consistency in giving, where someone is giving year in and year out, or in the case of most parishes, right, week in and week out. They are the most likely planned givers, okay? So just to wrap up, as we're in our last couple of minutes, so when you're going to move forward in your planned giving efforts, you need to play for keeps. You need to keep people informed. You need to track inquiries. And when people tell you that they've raised you to the level of family, record it in your database. And I'll talk more about that at the beginning of our next session. You also need to be saying thank you over and over again. And we'll talk about how to do that more in the next session. You'll also see this, but for those of you who are departing, I'll leave this slide. This is really what is most important to me, which is for you to be thinking about what will you do next. Even if it's a very small step, take the step, do something, educate yourself, listen to the next webinar at another time, and begin your planning at your congregation. Even if you just promise yourself you're going to reach out to the Episcopal Church Foundation or to Ken Allen to share all of the many, many different resources that I'll be going over in the next session with you. You always have access, just to be clear, to all of our almost all of them, I should say, on our Vital Practices website, ecfvp.org. And you can listen to all of our pre-recorded webinars. And as I mentioned before, you can make use of those in the context of an adult forum. I'm actually going to be highlighting a couple of webinars in the next session and share those with you as well. Whoops, wrong direction. This is a quick picture of our team. All of us in my area at the Episcopal Church Foundation are here to assist and build you up and support you as leaders of your congregation. So please do let us know how we can help. Ken, any final comments as we wrap up and switch to the other webinar?
Just to say thank you, Jim, for this, to welcome all of you who are going to be able to be back with us in about 15 minutes at 11:30 current time. And we will see you then. And we will be coming back to you to make arrangements to ship to you the planned giving kit from ECF. So you'll be able to look forward to that. We'll see you in about 15 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken.